Before Assassin's Creed Mirage came out, I made a video discussing where I thought the game might rank before we got hands-on, as sort of a way to gauge the hype for the game. Well, now I'm making a video discussing where it ranks now that we've gotten hands-on with the game. Have things changed? What was good? What was bad? We're gonna discuss that today. So without further ado, remember, if you do enjoy today's video, don't forget to leave it a big old like. If you enjoy content like this, you want more like it, be sure to check out that button underneath the video. It used to be red, it still says subscribe. Last but not least, gotta thank my channel members. You guys help make these videos possible. If you want to join, get access to the exclusive perks that they get, be sure to check out that blue join button. One last thing before we get started, I have to thank Boostroid Cloud Gaming for partnering with me on this channel. Honestly, their cloud gaming service is super convenient. If you do own games on your PC and you want to play them on the go, for just a few bucks a month, you can go and sign up for their service and be able to play all the games that you already own just by simply linking your Steam account, your Rockstar Game account, or one of many other different accounts that you can link to your Boostroid account and play them in your browser, on your phone, on your laptop, on a tablet, any number of devices. If you can get on a browser, you can use their service. It's fantastic. Honestly, I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 at work and at school, and it's been very convenient on my laptop that doesn't even have a graphics card in it. So that's been fun. Now, I will say, just my personal experience of it, there is a little bit of input lag. So you do need a pretty good internet connection to reduce that as much as possible, but I really can't complain for being able to play games on my phone, tablet, or laptop. It's pretty convenient to be able to do that anywhere, and even if you don't own games on PC, there is a library of free games that you can play as well, so you have options no matter what. So if you want to support the channel further, check out my link down below, and not only will you be helping me, but you'll also be helping yourself. Anyway, let's get into the video. So if you saw my previous video on this topic, where do I think Assassin's Creed Mirage will rank? I ranked it in the top 5. I thought at its very best, if it nailed everything correctly despite the shortcomings we knew would be present, if the story was good enough, it could top what Origins was and be on the fringe of that top 5 part of my rankings. Now again, this is my personal rankings. I try to be somewhat objective, but overall this is largely subjective. Even if you mostly agree with me, your rankings probably look a bit different, and I know some people will definitely disagree with me and they will have very different rankings. That's okay, but for my rankings, that is where I had it. If you look at them, you'll either see, oh, I mostly agree with you, or I mostly don't. Yeah, that type of thing. Now, did it live up to that ranking? Well, let's discuss some of the pros and some of the cons, and then we'll look at where this game ranks now. First things first, I want to talk about is the open world. I think Baghdad is one of my favorite settings in the entire franchise. Not only is the city unique in its shape with the circular city in the middle and everything like that, I adore that uniqueness. I think it's really awesome, and I love this time period and this particular setting. It's very cool, whether it has to do with the House of Wisdom, or whether it's the architecture, the culture that just drips all over Baghdad that is so cool. It all is just something that I personally enjoy a lot, which again is fairly subjective when it comes to this sort of thing, but that part of it I really enjoy. So it puts Baghdad a lot higher for me than maybe for someone else. On top of that, it has to do with Baghdad's gameplay and the opportunities that it presents to the player. Now, this can be things such as enigmas, which are probably one of my favorite things in the entire franchise. Now, these are a play on the Nostradamus enigmas from Assassin's Creed Unity, which basically required Google to solve, because unless you knew obscure random statues in Paris, you are not going to solve them. In this game, they're much more contextual, so you can solve any of the enigmas simply by looking at your map and going to different locations that you think are the spot you need to be looking for if you're looking at the clues in the enigma. I think that's fantastic. I love it. It doesn't just mark answers on the map for you. It's just really, really well done. And I honestly hope they try to include something like this in every single game in the future. And if they do add on things to Mirage, I hope more enigmas are a part of that, because I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the enigmas, which seem random because they're such a small thing, but it forces you to use your brain, and I love that. Another thing are some of the events that can go on in Baghdad. Now, apparently there were supposed to be random crowd events. Almost think of like in Unity how there'll be pickpockets or something and you have to go and try and stop them. I didn't run into any of those at all, so if they are in the game, please make them more prevalent. But I didn't run into any of those, but things like the mysterious shard sort of assassination mini games that you could do, where you have to really decide how you want to approach that. Do I risk taking on some notoriety by just taking all 3 guys out, take out the guards and the person holding the shard, or do I pop smoke and just steal it and walk through and let them live on? There's different ways you can approach it based on what you prefer to do, because say you do pop the smoke, well, you just sacrificed one of your tools, and then you have to go buy another one. Potentially. That's not much of a punishment, and that's the route I typically chose, and it was very satisfying. You feel very cool as you just walk through the smoke and steal the shard and keep walking on like nothing happened. Feels very cool, very satisfying. I enjoyed that. But if you want to take them all out, you can do that too. There's also times where if you do have notoriety, you can quite literally cut the tension with a knife, and it is extremely funny when you do walk up on one of your posters and maybe there's some guards standing there and you're at level 2 or 3 and they notice you on the poster and freak out and start chasing you. Just little things like that are so awesome in Baghdad, and I love how tense they make it feel when you do have notoriety. It really is one of the best notoriety experiences I've had in a long time in this franchise, and I'm really glad they did it the way that they did it. Now, speaking of all these things, let's get into the gameplay, because that's another fantastic pro. The stealth tools that they give you and the abilities they give you are amazing. You have immense satisfaction in how you can approach each and every situation in wildly different ways. You can play quickly and just sort of play the stealth as it comes to you, or you can plan things out and move accordingly and set up different traps and different ways to escape before you actually make your first move. I think that's really cool, and I love that they give you the ability to do that. The guard setups allow for very interesting moments in gameplay, and I think assassin focus, I will say, is something I personally enjoyed. Yes, it's not perfectly implemented. I would like to see Basim actually moving as opposed to seemingly teleporting. But the animus glitch on the screen and the lore explanation for what it is, I think is really cool, and the way that you can use it in the gameplay where you can throw a knife and then pop the assassin focus, and as the knife hits the other guy, you're assassinating the guy next to him. Those can lead to some pretty satisfying gameplay moments, I have to say. Now, again, I understand for people who want a completely purist approach to the game, that it probably takes them out of the game, and that's why I think it's not implemented perfectly. But the fun factor for me just pretty much sold me on it, and I was okay with it as I played through the game and got to play around with it a bit more. Now, again, I completely understand if you don't like it, and it's honestly something that's a pro, but I would say is on the controversial side of things. And that's sort of where I'm going to lead into the more negative side of what this game has to offer. And I guess really this could also be controversial, and that is the story. The story starts very strong and it ends very strong, but the middle section, the middle bulk of the storyline is where it really stumbles on itself. What it tries to do is use the Assassin's Creed Valhalla arc setup. So you can tackle each arc in each district of Baghdad however you want to. If you want to go to a particular district, you can. If you just want to take them all in order, you can do that too. The problem is they break up the characters and it breaks up the linear storytelling to a point to where I think it completely takes a lot of the character development out of the game. I think it takes a lot of the bond that you can form and a lot of what the game can say about its themes. I think it takes away a lot of that and sort of limits what the game can actually be, which is an issue. Take, for example, Ali and Roshan. I think they're two characters that should have been in every single arc in the game, or had much more of a presence in the ones that they did show up in. One, because Ali is the type of character who is criticizing the Creed and what the Assassins stand for, despite the fact that he is leading a rebellion that the Assassins support. But Ali is similar to Loki, who is an extremist for the values that the Assassins hold. Yes, they value freedom, but they don't want it to dive too far to where it becomes chaos, and that is why the Assassins hypocritically, in their own way, do have a set of rules that you must follow. They have some tinge of order to stop the freedom that they preach from turning into absolute chaos. And that is where people like Ali, in their chaos and will to keep fighting, they end up losing people. You can see this with Ollie, and we know this from Loki and the loss of his family. Now, granted, the context around it all can be very different, but at the end of the day, their pursuit of their own ideals went so far as to destroy everything around them. This is also a theme in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and that requires Edward to mature. Is you can love freedom as much as you want and liberty and personal liberty, but sometimes you have to stop and fight for something bigger than yourself. And in another way, Roshan is sort of the alternate criticism of the Creed and why I wish she was even more present, because I think her arc is still good in the game, but it's not as good as it could have been if she was more present in each and every arc of the mid-game. And that's because she is almost a zealot for the Creed. She is so dedicated to upholding the Creed that when she needs to simply care for Basim and be a human and explain to him why she doesn't want him to go into the vault, why they don't want to tell him who he really is, instead of giving him that truth, they feel that they can control him, that they're maybe in a position above him in terms of knowledge and whatnot, that because they try to limit Basim's knowledge of who he really is and his memories of Loki, it ends up really leading him to embrace those things even more, because now he feels like the Hidden Ones and Roshan have in a way betrayed him, which just plays even more into Loki's hands. And that's really the tragedy for Basim, is the people around him, had they just been honest with him rather than try to hide the truth from him, could have maybe helped him approach his own situation in a better, healthier manner than what we have, because now he not only has the memories of Loki, who is actively looking to take revenge on the people that hurt him in his previous life during the time of the Isu, but now he has those resentments as Basim as well towards the people around him. And while he supports the ideals of the assassins, it's really on his own terms that he supports them. And so that's really the tragedy there. Two characters that maybe could have ended up helping him, especially Roshan, end up really showing him the door to becoming Loki again, to remembering Loki and everything that he went through. That really leads Basim to merging even harder with Loki when he does go into the temple down there. All that being said, the story still has the strong beginning and it still has the strong ending. So it's not a totally terrible story, but it could have been much better than it is. Something a bit more linear, taking you down a pathway of taking on the districts in a particular order, telling you a particular story as you go along, could have been fine. And I don't think they even would have had to lock off the other districts until you got to that point in the storyline. They could have done that if they wanted to really call back to Assassin's Creed 1, but they didn't have to. They could have kept the city wide open for you to explore just until you took down each part of the story. You would learn what is actually going on there. Now, the one real negative in this game is going to be the limited parkour. They're just, as much as there are great design paths and everything for you to run through, and there's some decent animations and whatnot, there just isn't enough there mechanically for the parkour. And I know people are gonna say, oh, we discovered side and back ejects. Those are extremely contextual for the side ejects, and unless you mod the back ejects to jump higher, they're not that great. As it is by default, it's not a great parkour system. It's just very limited. Now, it is practical in that the flow that you can get into when you need to get through a certain area or follow a certain path, yeah, it works great for that, but it's not as free as I would like it to be. It doesn't allow for the expression I would like it to allow. That said, that's really it for the negatives. There's nothing that I outright hate about this game. Honestly, this game captivated me like crazy. Despite its flaws, I was hooked to Mirage. So where does that leave it in the rankings? In the rankings, like I stated at the beginning of the video and in my previous video, I thought it could be as high as number 5. Just above Origins, but just below Revelations. Is it going to rank that high? Personally, I think because of the shortcomings of the story, the gameplay really did exceed my expectations, but I think the shortcomings of the storyline do drop it. Again, in that previous video I said if the story wasn't as good, that it would be down around where Assassin's Creed 3 is. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn, but that was pretty much spot on, because looking at it and kind of analyzing what it does well and what it does poorly, I would actually put it just above Assassin's Creed 3, but just below Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. I don't think 3 is a terrible game by any means. I think it has some really good strong points, but I think Mirage does the gameplay far better, especially in selling the assassin experience. Despite 3 being the one to introduce naval and all that, I just think things like the Frontier really hold it back. But Unity I have higher because it does everything Mirage does, but better. Sure, it doesn't tie into the grand story of Assassin's Creed quite as well. I don't think its Sage story really does much. I don't think Unity's story overall is all that anyway, but the presentation of it is far better than what we have here in Mirage. And I think you can play things like the stealth and the parkour far better and faster than what you can do in Mirage. That doesn't mean Mirage is bad by any means. I just think that it is slotted right there just below Unity, and I think that's a good spot to have it. Both of these games are games that absolutely have me hooked despite their flaws, and are games that I will find myself coming back to over the years over and over again. I've already been doing that with Unity. I'm sure I will be doing that with Mirage. The only thing also that holds back Mirage is the lack of replayable missions and the lack of replayable bases and things like that. In Unity, you can go back and replay different parts of the story with new tools so you can re-experience them. In Mirage, you can't do that. There is no new game plus, there's no mission replay. So that is another thing that is holding it back that does lean in Unity's favor. So all that said, let me know down below, what do you think of Assassin's Creed Mirage? Where would you rank it? What are your rankings like? Let's have a discussion down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Yeah.